Psychology facts that actually describe everything. The human psyche is infinitely complex, which means new research comes out every day that helps illuminate why we are the way we are. And while some psychological studies provide us with fairly banal psychology facts, here we've compiled psychological data that explains human nature and may help you better understand some of the patterns you see in both yourself and other people. 1. Our plan A has a lower chance of success. If we have a plan B, there are times when being prepared hurts. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania discovered that when volunteers considered a backup plan before beginning a task, they performed worse than those who hadn't. Furthermore, many lost interest in succeeding the first time around when they became aware of their possibilities. The researchers emphasized that while making plans in advance is a good practice, you can have better results if you keep them vague. 2. Fear can be comforting if we are not in danger. There are a few ideas as to why some people enjoy scary movies more than others. With hormones serving as the primary one, you experience the adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine that come with a fight or flight response when you watch a scary movie or walk through a haunted house. But no matter how terrified you are, your brain understands that you are not actually in danger, so you get the natural high without the risk. 3. Catching a yawn can deepen our connection, even when you are not sleepy. Why do you yawn when someone else does? One of the most popular explanations for why yawning spreads quickly is that it demonstrates empathy. People who are less likely to exhibit empathy, such as young children with autism or toddlers who haven't yet learned the skill, are also less likely to yawn in response to someone else's. 4. We are more concerned about one person than we are about large calamities. In a different University of Pennsylvania study, 3 groups were informed about the starvation deaths of millions of people, a young girl who was starving to death, and both of these circumstances, even the group that had heard the little girl's tale in the context of the larger tragedy, donated less when they heard about the little girl than when they heard the numbers. Psychologists believe that we are predisposed to assist the person in front of us, but when the issue feels overwhelming, we feel that our contribution is insignificant. 5. Middles are harder to recall than beginnings and ends. According to a study published in Frontiers of Human Neuroscience, people are most likely to recollect items from the very end or the very beginning of a list. When asked to do so, the middle gets jumbled, which may also explain why you just vaguely recall when your boss winding up her presentation. 6. It takes 5 good things to balance out one bad item because of a cognitive bias known as negativity bias, which causes us to focus more on negative information than positive. It's easy to quickly forget that a coworker praised your presentation while obsessing over the remarks made by a child at the bus stop about your shoes. We require a good to terrible ratio in our lives of at least 5 to 1 in order to feel balanced. 7. When someone else prepares the food, it tastes better. Have you ever wondered why? Despite using the same ingredients, the sandwich from the takeout business down the street tastes better than the ones you make at home. One study discovered that when you prepare your own food, you spend so much time around it that by the time you sit down to eat, it already feels less interesting, which lowers your enjoyment. 8. Rather than not knowing what to anticipate, we'd prefer to know something awful is coming. It's less stressful to know something bad is likely to happen. For example, there's no possibility we'll arrive at a meeting on time than it is to not know how things will turn out. According to researchers whose work was published in the journal Nature, that's because when we don't know what to expect, the region of our brain that forecasts consequences, whether positive or negative, is most active. We won't just accept that we'll have to come up with a good excuse when we're late. We'll go through the stress of accelerating to beat traffic. 9. We make an effort to repay every favor. The law of reciprocity contends that our desire to aid someone who has helped us is ingrained in us. It goes beyond simple good manners. It presumably evolved because people needed to support one another in order for society to function properly. Stores try to take advantage of this by providing freebies in the hopes that you'll make a purchase. 10. We want to breach more rules when one looks too stringent. Psychologists have studied a phenomenon called reactance. When people perceive certain freedoms being taken away, they not only break that rule, but they break even more than they otherwise would have in an effort to regain their freedom. This could be one of the best psychology facts to explain why a teenager who can't use his phone in class will chew gum while stealthily sending a text. 11. Our favorite subject is ourselves. Your conceited sibling simply talks about himself, since that's how his brain is designed. Don't blame him for it. According to a Harvard study, talking about ourselves causes our reward centers to fire up more than talking about other people. 12. We want to squeeze cute things for a purpose. I simply wanted to smoosh it until it pops because it's so cute. People who experience what is known as cuteness aggression don't actually wish to trample that precious pet. When we experience a surge of happy emotions, such as when we gaze at an unbelievably adorable infant animal, research published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience discovered that a small amount of hostility helps us counteract the high. 13. Our brains attempt to add interest to dry speeches. Researchers from the University of Glasgow discovered that, similar to how we hear voices when we read aloud, our brains similarly speak. During tedious talks, when someone speaks monotonously, we unconsciously intensify the image in our minds. 14. Some people take pleasure in witnessing others rage. According to a University of Michigan study, men with higher levels of testosterone remembered facts more vividly when they were accompanied by an angry visage, rather than a neutral one or none at all. This suggests that they considered the angry look to be satisfying. According to the researchers, this could indicate that some people love making other people gaze at them, provided that the outburst of rage doesn't stay long enough to pose a threat. This may explain why the guy at work won't stop making that poor joke about you. 15. When others disagree, we immediately question our own judgment. College students were asked to identify which of 3 lines was the same length as a fourth in a well-known experiment from the 1950s. The participants gave the same incorrect response after hearing others that select an answer that was obviously incorrect. 16. We do not multitask as well as we think we do. According to research in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, even when you think you're doing multitasking, you're actually just moving between the 2 tasks fast and concentrating on just one at a time. It makes sense why it's so challenging to listen to your partner while browsing Instagram. 17. We have no doubt that things will get better, whether you like your current situation or not. Most people have an optimism bias that leads them to believe that the future will be better than the present. This belief is supported by studies published in Current Biology. We believe we'll advance professionally, never get divorced, have adorable children, and live to a ripe old age. There's no wrong in dreaming, even if none of those are possible for everyone. 18. We unintentionally adopt the worldviews we desire to. Confirmation bias is the propensity to perceive evidence in a way that supports our pre-existing beliefs. It affects all people, including humans. Therefore, there is a significant likelihood that your uncle won't change his political views, regardless of how many facts you present to him. You'll just have to accept this as one of those psychological facts that you cannot change. 19. Our minds encourage laziness. Energy conservation makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, since our predecessors had to be prepared for everything when food was scarce. Unfortunately, that is still true today, which is bad news for anyone watching their weight. According to a tiny study that appeared in Current Biology, treadmill walking causes volunteers to naturally change their gait in order to burn fewer calories. 20. Loneliness is harmful to our health. Researchers discovered that levels of the blood-clotting protein fibrinogen are greater in people with fewer acquaintances. Having 15 pals instead of 25 was equally as horrible as smoking, since the effect was so potent.